The 14th year of Chenghua. Extra chapters. A gentleman of extras that hasn't yet expressed himself fully. Chapter 154. Insta-kill. Lu Lingzi didn't really feel that writing novels was a waste, not to mention that he liked reading this one. Furthermore, it had been written by Tang Fan, so there was nothing bad about it. The news had simply been much too shocking, which was why he didn't react for such a long time, getting the overall feeling that this couldn't be real. He couldn't resist looking at the top page of the script over and over again, after which he said, in a voice slightly trembling in excitement, "Brother Tang, I bought this novel, too, after I first heard of it in a tea house. I didn't expect that Mr. San Qing would be you, and you are actually him." Saying that, he then realized that he was being a little incoherent. He flushed as he quickly covered up his mistake. Cough, what I wanted to say is that you write really well. Tang Fan started laughing. Lu Lingzi's high praise was sincere, anyone could tell that much, but in the eyes of many, things like this can never make it into any halls of high repute. A court official writing novels is an easy handle for others to grab. I hope you can help me keep this a secret. Lu Lingzi nodded. I understand, don't worry about. After this script is finished, you're going to send it to the printers, right? How long are you going to go with it? After coming back to himself, he still had a sort of dreamlike sense of unreality. If it really had to be described, it would be around the same as suddenly discovering that the person one liked for a really long time happened to be living next door. The joy came on much too fast, he was having a hard time accepting the facts for a moment. After I write about the decline of the Chu state, I'll stop, Tang Fan said with a smile. Lu Lingzi was greatly shocked. Why stop there? Tang Fan's smile went pained. What free time do I have? If I don't go to my cabinet office for one day, the files would pile up into a mountain, right? Right. I used to write novels to supplement my income. Now that my salary is enough to live on and I'm in the position that I have, where I manage the government, I should be the utmost of loyal to doing my duties well since I've entered the cabinet. When you were in my workroom today, did you read the stack of dossiers in the corner? No, Lu Lingzi said, a little ashamed. The second he had gone in and found out that Tang Fan wasn't there, he had immediately gone absent-minded, sitting there all day without the will to work. He hadn't taken a careful read of the files on Tang Fan's desk. Ever since the Great Ming Code was put into practice, many oversights have shown up in it. From it, I gathered up a lot of supplementary dossiers, which I prepared to bring to the cabinet for a discussion. When we go to the workroom tomorrow, please take a look at it first. If you have any ideas, you can tell me. Lu Lingzi agreed. Seeing that Tang Fan wanted to flip over and get up yet had to grit his teeth to do so, he stepped up to stop him. Is there anything you want to get? I'll help you. Tang Fan side-eyed him. I'm going to the latrine. How could you help with that? Who knew what Lu Lingzi was thinking of, as he blushed and found that hard to answer. Ignoring him, Tang Fan got up and left, then came back after a little while. He walked a little sluggishly, his waist sprain was clearly serious. Lu Lingzi came up to help him. Let me massage that for you, brother Tang. Tang Fan said there was no need, of course, but Lu Lingzi said cheerfully, someone learning martial arts needs to grasp some massaging skills, just in case. Don't be so polite to me. A massage will relax you, and I guarantee that you'll be just fine tomorrow. While he spoke, he had already placed his hands on Tang Fan's waist. Before Tang Fan had time to say anything, he heard a voice from the door asking, "What's going on here?" Lu Lingzi turned around, saw the newcomer and called out to greet him, "Commanding Officer Sui." Sui Zhou nodded at him, his line of sight sweeping over the other's hands on Tang Fan's middle. He quietly walked over, helped Tang Fan to sit on the bed's edge and massaged him while saying to Lu Lingzi, "Since you're here, why not stay to eat?" right? Tang Fan said. Yuking, you live by yourself in the capital anyways, right? You should join us for dinner. Hey. Are you trying to strangle a pig? You're squeezing too hard. Sui Zhou acted like nothing was wrong. I unintentionally used too much force. Tang Fan's mouth twitched out of anger, but he didn't say anything else. Lu Lingzi got the overall feeling that the atmosphere seemed to be a little strange, as if he had unintentionally disturbed them. However, out of some sort of original intent that he couldn't describe, he decided to defer to his own wants. Then I'll have to trouble you. Sui Zhou lived next door to the Tang residence. This, Lu Lingzi knew. He just hadn't expected that the two households would have such a good relationship, that they even ate dinner together. But that was not what greatly shocked. The most surprising thing was that dinner had not been cooked by the Tang maids but by Sui Zhou himself. Dongpo pork, dry-broiled pig kidney, stir-fried prawns with eggs, shredded seitan, mushu vegetables, pure chicken stock, stuffed shiitake, mandarin fish. Even for 3 people, these dishes were too much. And it was really hard to imagine that the impressively well-decorated, cold-faced, merciless leader of the Chenghua of the rumors would ever wash his hands to fix up soup. Looking at the dishes before him, then thinking back to the snacks he had brought, Lu Lingzi simply felt inferior. Maybe it all just looked and smelled good, but tasted average? With that idea in his head, he sampled a bite of mandarin fish. The meat was tender, a slight sweetness within the salty flavor. One had to have the perfect talent of heat control in order to retain the texture. Maybe it was just this single dish that was exceptional. Unable to keep from inwardly cursing, he picked up some dongpo pork. After chewing on it for a bit, then seeing how Tang Fan was wolfing it down, he had to admit that Sui Zhou's cooking skills could indeed be called top grade. Even a picky eater like Lu Lingzi had to say that it was admirable. Had this all been made by the cooks and maids, it would be taken for granted at best, with no one ever thinking much of it, but it had been created by Sui Zhou's hand. Everyone knew that the Chenghua was not any more relaxed than any given bureau. Even though little of their life could be made public, commanding officer was a third-rank position. Him having this much culinary talent was pretty shocking. Lu Lingzi had to compare himself to him. After thinking over it for a long time, the only apparent thing that he could possibly excel at over him was literary arts, right? Being a Hanlin Palace honorate was something the other could only ever dream of. Despite making himself feel a bit better, his mood didn't improve. The food tasted good and Tang Fan kept telling him to eat without cease, but his appetite kept plummeting down. That was because you helped run King a lot in Suzhou and he sees you as a little brother. There's no harm in you coming here more often when you're free, Sui Zhou said prior to his departure, after seeing him to the door. Hearing that, Lu Lingzi got depressed, thinking, isn't this the Tang home? Why are you with the name of Sui, talking like you're the dignified host? However, Sui Zhou's aura was much too potent. While he spoke politely with a stern face, Lu Lingzi couldn't choke out a single word of defiance, no matter how unhappy he was. On the way home, he was feeling very depressed, then was abruptly startled that Sui, he didn't like brother Tang like that too, did he? That speculation made him jump in fright, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized it was probable. An outstanding man like brother Tang was inevitably susceptible to being admired by both men and women. Not to mention how he had heard the Sui Zhou and Tang Fan had been through life and death experiences together. The friendship between the two was naturally beyond the norm. And, thinking of how the Sui had not yet taken a wife. Recalling that tidbit, Lu Lingzi felt a sense of crisis, but there was no way that he could run to Tang Fan and ask for an answer. As a consequence of holding in his thoughts, he had not slept a wink for a whole night, causing him to have 2 dark bags under his eyes when he went on duty the day after, which drew Tang Fan's concerned inquiry. After getting off work that day, Lu Lingzi went to the Tang residence again. This time, he wised up by ordering a table-filling banquet from Xianqi restaurant and having it delivered to the Tang residence, all in the beautified name of feeling bad about eating free food yesterday, hence why he had bought Tang Fan dinner today. The quality of food from Xianqi restaurant did not need to be described. To this day, Tang Fan had retained a habit of going to Xianqi restaurant for a meal whenever he had both the free time and the mood. In others' eyes, eating was just eating, and even if the food was a bit more tasty, it was an occasional treat, at best. Tang Fan was different. Delicious delicacies allowed him to relax more, and could also calm his mind so that he could think a bit further towards things. Oftentimes, after eating, he could figure things out that he hadn't been able to before. However, Lu Lingzi had no clue that Tang Fan was a regular at Xianqi restaurant. Seeing that Tang Fan appeared to really like the feast, he didn't neglect to curry favor and take credit. "If you like it, brother Tang, I can get you another feast for tomorrow." Tang Fan shook his head. "No need. You're just starting your path to bureaucracy and your salary isn't much. You have your family to back you, but you should still save up instead of squandering your money at will." Lu Lingzi was about to say it was no problem, only for Suizhou to say, "You went too many times to Xianqi restaurant this last month, and that'll hurt your diet. You should restrain yourself a bit more." Tang Fan smiled awkwardly, touching his nose. Lu Lingzi felt as if he was punched in the guts. He was still in Hanlin Academy last month. He was now entirely positive that Suizhou had the same thoughts as him, else he wouldn't be making things hard for him all the time. Thus, his fighting spirit was instantly roused. Now that he thought about it, apart from cooking skills, where else was he inferior compared to Sui Guangchuan? At the very least, they were both martial artists. While who would come up better and their relative strength were unknown, if Lu Lingzi looked inside himself about his own training and apprenticeship, he definitely wouldn't lose. That was saying nothing about how he was also a Hanlin entrant. Moreover, if he had to rely solely on literal fighting, he would fling that man out onto the street. Lu Lingzi further put himself at Tang Fan's perspective. A civil official, a cabinet vizier in particular, having a close relationship with the leader of the Jinyue was not a good thing to see at all. If the emperor's suspicion was roused, it would surely bring harm to Tang Fan. Maybe he could see his thoughts or something, because after the dinner was over, Suizhou suddenly said, "I heard that you once entered a Shaolin monastery to study martial arts." Lu Lingzi nodded, suspicious and on alert. "Yes." Suizhou gave him a shallow smile. "I once exchanged blows with Grandmaster Muyan and benefited a lot from it." "Which master did you study under?" For some reason, the other's smile was incomparably eye-stabbing to Lu Lingzi, and he went with the flow to say, "Grandmaster Muyan is my sect uncle. He has very formidable martial arts, and I also received his pointers before. Since you have a tie to my sect from also exchanging moves with my uncle, Commanding Officer Sui, how about I ask you for a little consultation tonight?" Suizhou nodded. "Sure." Lu Lingzi was disgusted to the maximum by the official airs this man was putting on, and how he was pretending to be as breezy as a fine day. He felt beyond annoyed, as well as powerless. Compared to Suizhou, he was not lacking whatsoever, the only difference being their age. It was precisely due to him lacking those few years that he hadn't been able to go through life and death crises with Tang Fan, sharing joys and hardships with him. That was what caused him to feel stifled. But, since someone was a step ahead of him, what could he even do? Tang Fan was a model civil official that was not much interested in brawls. Seeing that they were going to compare techniques, he had no will to immediately get up and go spectate. It was only when Lu Lingzi requested that he be the judge that he languidly got up and walked to the door, not forgetting to say, "Be careful. Don't ruin the flowers and trees." Lu Lingzi was even more determined to win this consultation, make Tang Fan know that he was talented in both civil and martial affairs, and much more suitable to be at his side than Suizhou. The two moved very quickly. Neither of them were armed, exchanging blows with just their bare hands, but their movements were quick. To an amateur, they looked nothing more than two figures jumping up and down and flying all around. In the blink of an eye, dozens of moves were made. Despite Lu Lingzi's youth, it was because of his sect that every style and motion of his was as steady as Mount Tai. In comparison, Sui Zhou's movements flowed even better, not adhering to one sect, resembling an antelope hanging by its horn to avoid disaster on the ground. His movements were practiced and he counterattacked everything, giving one no way to guard against him. Soon, Lu Lingzi realized that the gap between them was not in the style of their fighting style or how much experience they had facing enemies, as he himself had a lot of actual combat experience while he had been traveling, but that their differences lied within him not having the courage to kill, and therefore lacking the will and mind to viciously go at it. Meanwhile, Sui Zhou had been forged from iron and blood, from fields of death, so every move of his had a harsh edge to it that the former did not possess. In the end, when it was nearly the 200th move, Lu Lingzi became distracted and his opponent quickly grabbed that opportunity to kick him right in the middle. Lu Lingzi's momentum didn't slow until he hit the base of the wall, knocking over a pot of flowers. He lost. That fact made him beyond disheartened, with even Tang Fan's comfort failed to ease it. When departing the Tang home, Sui Zhou said on his own initiative that he would see the guest out on the host's behalf. Tang Fan didn't decline, and neither did Lu Lingzi refuse. Because he had something to say to Sui Zhou. "Commanding Officer Sui, are you having unfathomable thoughts about Brother Tang?" he interrogated. It was clear from the way he called the other that they were close. Sui Zhou stood with his arms folded across his chest and said, "Whatever things you're thinking of are also what I'm thinking of." Lu Lingzi choked but pulled through. "Forgive my bluntness, but you are in a sensitive position. If you get too close to him, then you'll be likely to arouse the Emperor's suspicion and end up bringing harm to Brother Tang." The other's expression was mild as he answered, "You don't need to bother worrying about that. I have my ways." "You're being unreasonable," Lu Lingzi said angrily. Sui Zhou raised a brow. "Whether I'm being unreasonable or not, you are definitely lacking in one point compared to me." "What point?" Lu Lingzi asked, disbelieving. "I'm willing to give up everything for him, including having children." "How about you?" Lu Lingzi was dumbfounded. He didn't snap out of it for a long time due to that statement. He didn't even realize it when Sui Zhou shut the door and left him outside. It was said that on that very night, frequent sounds of moans and begs for mercy came from the Tang bedroom, the contents of which were somewhere along the lines of, "He wanted to stop by, I couldn't just refuse him." "You're taking your anger out on the wrong person, don't be so rough, I have to go into the palace tomorrow." End chapter. The 14th year of Chenghua. Extra chapters. A gentleman of extras that hasn't yet expressed himself fully. Chapter 155. Comprehension. By the time he arrived in the cabinet the next day, Lu Lingzi was still in a daze and a bit slow to respond. Because of what Sui Zhou had said, he had tossed and turned for a full night, inevitably losing sleep again. It could not be denied that those words had shocked him to the core. Being able to give up everything for someone else, even having children, what sort of feeling was that? To be honest, even though Lu Lingzi understood that he held admiration for Tang Fan, he had never thought of the problem of having children before. That was to say, in his oblivious thoughts, having children was not contradictory to getting close to Tang Fan. But Sui Zhou had viciously woken him up. His brain had successfully turned into a lump of paste. His formerly clever and witty road of thought now looked to be a dead end, no exit in sight no matter how he turned. What if he and Brother Tang actually did share feelings one day? Would he give up taking a wife and having children for him? Give up continuing his family line? He didn't want to think of the answer, but he knew, deep down in his heart, that he might not be able to do that much for Tang Fan. There were many reasons for this. His family was influential and had many ties, his elders would never allow him to do something like that. When it came to having boy toys, it typically meant nothing more than fooling around, and as far as public opinion went, no one really meddled much in it, believing it to be nothing more than a fad that would come and go. However, Tang Fan was different, and not someone one could simply mess around with. Instead, it would be Tang Fan who would be messing around with them. Taking a couple of thousand steps back, he had to say that he saw Tang Fan as someone as clean as the wind and bright as the moon, and could not tolerate the slightest bit of blasphemy towards him. Using a boy toy analogy was not going to do. Those reasons did not apply to Suizhou though. Aside from not being a civil official, the other was not inferior to him in the slightest, and even had a higher rank than him. That was saying nothing of him being the Empress Dowager's consort kin, making him be viewed highly within the imperial family. The most important part, too, was that the Jinyue was the emperor's eyes and ears, doing the arresting and investigating. Ordinary people would be terrified hearing of them, while officials would dare to openly provoke them even less. And a man like that was actually willing to give up having a wife and children. For that reason, even if Lu Lingzi didn't want to admit it, he was inferior to Suizhou. Tang Fan knew nothing of Lu Lingzi's winding and convoluted inner thoughts. He was busy handling the accumulated work from yesterday. Some work that needed to be handed off to others, he tossed right over to Lu Lingzi to handle, told him that he could ask if he didn't understand something, and ended it with burying his head into his work completely in professional mode, disciplined, and earnest. It was completely different from how he typically was in private. And yet it was those two completely different aspects of him that made his personality all the richer with charm. In front of his friends, he was just the lazy, gluttonous, humorous, and witty Tang Runking, but in front of his co-workers, he was the gentle and approachable, neglecting to even eat during work time Sir Tang. Looking at Tang Fan's profile as he expressionlessly lowered his head to read files, Lu Lingzi found that just seeing him like this was enough to muddle his senses, as if captivated. A little while later, Tang Fan's neck seemed to be a little sore, as he couldn't help but put his hand on the back of his neck and squeeze. Upon raising his head, he noticed Lu Lingzi still standing there like a stick, and looked surprised. "Why are you still here? Sir Tang, you just told me to wait here, saying that you were going to show me the manuscript of revised laws." In the cabinet, he had always taken care to protect Tang Fan's reputation, never using the title of brother but instead addressed him as Sir. Tang Fan slapped his forehead, smiling apologetically at him. Right. I was so busy, I forgot." He quickly looked around, identified what he wanted from the various piles of files, picked one of them out, and passed it to Lu Lingzi. "Here it is. When you have free time, take it out and look at it. When the afternoon comes, the cabinet will start discussing it, and you all should be allowed to listen in. You may want to pay more attention then, as it will help you later on." Cabinet discussions generally forbade unrelated persons from entering and listening in, not even allowing for Lu Lingzi's group that was posted in the cabinet. For some not too important discussions, however, no one would drive them out if they decided to stay nearby. Those intending to listen and learn could use serving tea as an excuse to hang around. Lu Lingzi took the file, wanting to speak, but stopping. "Sir Tang." Tang Fan lowered his head once more, giving only a faint hum upon hearing him, the raised lilt of it expressing inquiry, and not looking back up. The words that had brewed for such a long time were on the tip of Lu Lingzi's tongue, but he said nothing in the end. Nothing. I'll leave you to your work." He returned to his own table, sat down and flipped open the file. Tang Fan's handwriting was not the same sort of gentle that he acted towards people, instead looking strong and vigorous, his proper regular script written with distinct boldness. Clearly, he was soft on the outside yet tough on the inside, concealing a hard-boned character deep within. Lu Lingzi was still a bit absent-minded, but once he got to reading, he gradually put his full attention into it. When noon came and Tang Fan called out for him to go eat and take a break, he then reluctantly set the file down, rubbing his eyes. "I've just discovered that my scholarly honors were all for nothing." Tang Fan chuckled. "Why do you feel that?" "In 10 years of strenuous study, I read all of the 4 books and 5 classics and listened to all of the great Dao's truths, yet I have no idea how to govern the country, or what laws for governance and peace there must be. Reading your clauses now, even though I went through each and every word, I still had to use a lot of brain power thinking about it. Obviously, I regard myself highly, when I'm just a coarse man in reality, all empty talk, no real work." The other grinned. "Don't put yourself down. Your starting point is already much higher than that of average people, and not comparable to those that only know how to study themselves to death. What you lack is none other than built-up experience. The great ancestor had his own purpose for establishing the imperial exams. Those that get to be palace honorates might not necessarily have the talent to govern, but all that do are learned scholars that have intensively studied poems and tomes. You need to keep that in mind." Lu Lingzi acknowledged his lesson seriously. The difference in age between them wasn't too high, but eminence took priority. Whether it was in officialdom or in academics, and with how things went in the world, Tang Fan was more than enough to be his mentor. Lu Lingzi even felt that being able to follow Tang Fan every day and get his advice was a blessing. However, remembering his desire that had been extinguished in its infancy before it could take shape, a burst of inexplicable heartsickness was felt within him. Before he could completely sort out his emotions, the afternoon cabinet meeting began. The emperor's health was getting more serious, each day worse than the last. Everyone knew what was going on and there was no need to lay it bare, quietly working on what they should be working on in preparation for the crowned prince's imminent ascension. The world was not going to stop spinning just because the emperor was ill. What was going to happen was still happening. In the 6th month, Hubei flooded. In the 7th month, Lintung and Xianyang had earthquakes. According to news from Datong's garrison, there were signs that the Tartars were getting restless. Ever since Zhengtong/Tianshun's era, coastal defenses had been virtually non-existent, and traces of Japanese pirates were frequently appearing. At this time, there was a signed commercial treaty between the Central Plains and Japan, so the pirates would use the guise of paying tribute to get in. Upon meeting soldiers, they would first cover up their origins, fake paying tribute, then use the time when the others were unprepared to kill and loot. Even great Ming merchant and civilian ships were repeatedly attacked by them. Many of the commoners lining the shores were unable to bear with these criminals. These stacks upon stacks of problems had been passed through local governments up to the Office of Transmissions, all of them important matters that urgently needed to be dealt with by the great Ming's viziers. Lu Lingzi and his fellow Hanlin Academy attendees read through them. Only now did they deeply understand the significance of the cabinet as the great Ming's supreme authority. An emperor that was wise and strategic, able to determine the universe in one word, would naturally be a good thing. However, if the emperor was ever anything like the present one, the role of the cabinet would become very important. These viziers had gone through layers of selection, many of them having rich experience in local governments or treading within the 6 ministries, and were also talents that had passed the imperial exams. They were able to deal with troubles that would leave the Hanlin Academy attendees flabbergasted and flailing. And several of those Hanlin Academy attendees, Lu Lingzi included, thereby witnessed the shrewd and capable aspect of the Solons. Take Lu Ji, for example. Despite censors having crowned him with the nickname of Lu Cotton Flower, if he actually was completely useless, he would never have remained in the cabinet for so long. There was a difference between not wanting to work and not being able to. After Wanan and the others fell off their horses, Lu Ji was worried that he would be next. In contrast to his previous non-interventionist ways, he had roused his energy overnight and dared to offend the emperor's face by admonishing him several times. He had warned the emperor to stay far away from alchemy, not to wallow in the sorrow of losing consort Wan, and so on. His painting style had changed much too quickly, dumbfounding everyone. Within the cabinet, no one was the same in personality and did many things differently. Even though Tang Fan was at the bottom rung, because he was the youngest amongst them, he had the most energy and his efficiency was at its pinnacle. Nowadays, he was not only in charge of managing the Ministry of Justice but also the Ministry of War. It was little wonder why Lu Lingzi could never find the chance to say anything to him even being in the same room, as Tang Fan was really too busy. The cabinet meeting's topic was related to the earthquake. Due to the need to allocate funds, Li Min, the Minister of Revenue, also took part. At this moment, following the fall of the Wan Party, the nicknamed clay figurine ministers were almost totally gone. Li Min had previously requested departure due to illness and then was reinstated 2 years ago, changing positions to Governor of Water Convoys, then later came to control the Ministry of Revenue, which displayed his capabilities. The meeting process was little more than Lu Ji suggesting an amount for the Ministry of Revenue to allocate, Li Min beginning to haggle because his ministry didn't have that much money right now since it was responsible for the northern area's provisions and the expenditure would eclipse its income, and the two wrangling for a long time. In that time, Lu Jian, Tang Fan, and Su Pu interjected to participate and discuss several times. Everyone spoke until their mouths were dried out. At last, an amount was set. Li Min's end would allocate money and provisions, and Lu Jian would have the responsibility of the cabinet's end. If anything came up, he should be contacted, and so on. The new Hanlin Academy attendees had just witnessed that cabinet discussions were fundamentally no different than haggling in a marketplace. Each of them looked astonished. Immediately following this, Tang Fan put forth his own clauses outline that pertained to the revision of the law and patched holes in the Great Ming Code. However, this topic went even less smoothly than the one before. Lu Ji was, at his core, someone who sought stability. Having learned his lesson from the Wan group, he refused to stick out of the basket any further, because once these clauses passed, the head of the cabinet would inevitably bear direct responsibility. Therefore, even though Lu Jian supported it, Tang Fan's proposal was still repressed by Lu Ji. He didn't reject it outright, merely saying that it should be discussed later. Tang Fan's hands were tied, he couldn't exactly grab him by the collar and compel him to give a definite answer immediately. This entire meeting had nothing to do with the Hanlin Academy attendees, but they still learned a lot from silently observing. As for what they had come to comprehend, that depended on their individual perceptions. Near the end of the discussion, a guard outside came in to pass word on that commanding officer Sui Zhou had come on the Empress Dowager's orders, bearing a decree to convey. Lu Ji quickly invited the other inside. After entering, Sui Zhou first cupped his hands towards everyone in a show of respect, then said, "This humble official just went to pay a visit to the Empress Dowager. She had a message she entrusted me with passing on." Everyone knew that he and the Dowager were consort kin, so they weren't surprised to hear this. "Please speak, Commanding Officer Sui," Lu Ji said. "Have you all drafted a posthumous title and imperial rank for noble consort Wan yet?" Lu Ji gave a fake cough. Dowager Zhou disliked consort Wan, that was something known to all. Answering the Dowager, "Yes. The title is Imperial Noble Consort of Compassion, Filialness, Grace, Austerity, Uprightness, Prudence, Glory, and Tranquility." Lady Wan was nothing more than a concubine. What virtues and talents did she have to receive 8 words in her posthumous title? Where was her compassion? Where was her filialness? His cold face that spoke on the Empress Dowager's behalf was really kind of terrifying. Even Lu Ji was scared, saying cautiously, "That was His Majesty's will." The Empress Dowager gave her order. "You all should talk it over again. In fights between gods, mortals suffered, really." Lu Ji was a little helpless, thinking to himself, this is an issue between mother and son. What has it got to do with us? However, he couldn't respond like that and was forced to agree. Having passed on the message, Sui Zhou didn't stay long, turning to go. But, when he passed by Tang Fan, his fingers imperceptibly bumped his, gently sweeping across the back of the other's hand. The act was lightning quick yet rather ambiguous. No one noticed it, aside from Lu Lingzi. His eyes widened. That was way too bold. End chapter. The 14th year of Chenghua. Extra chapters. A gentleman of extras that hasn't yet expressed himself fully. Chapter 156. Out with the old, in with the new. That blatant display of such ambiguous action made Lu Lingzi sour. Regardless of who had come first or after, he believed himself to be a bold person, yet he couldn't have done something like Suizhou had. Just like how Suizhou had asked him whether he could give everything up for Tang Fan. At the end of it all, this stemmed from his family restraining him. Previously, he had believed himself to have outranked Suizhou in terms of background. He had been born into a big, influential family similar to Tang Fan. The Ming Dynasty's consortkin were basically commoners, so whether it was discipline or knowledge, he had more in common with Tang Fan than Suizhou has. As the so-called communion of hearts and minds, wouldn't they have to first think alike at the bare minimum? But that background had now become a shortcoming of his. He always held some vague apprehensions at heart and couldn't let loose, making him less fearless than Suizhou. Recalling that scene from just now, despite Suizhou having been so bold, Tang Fan hadn't shown any revulsion and a faint trace of red suffusing the back of his neck. Could his feelings be any more obvious? That was what really made Lu Lingzi feel sour. After the cabinet discussion was over, everyone returned to their respective workrooms. Lu Lingzi's eyes were fixed onto the files in front of him, yet his heart had gone into tumult. Tang Fan had a lot to do and did not have the spare time to worry about him, so he didn't notice how he was acting strange. Work did not end until a long time afterwards. The files on the table had been reduced by over half. Only when Tang Fan felt his stomach grumbling did he straighten out his back, look up and discover that Lu Lingzi was sitting there. He asked, "Why haven't you left yet?" The other looked up blankly. Huh. He had managed to calm down enough to start reading through the documents Tang Fan had him practiced on, not expecting that it would get dark in the blink of an eye. Tang Fan laughed. "Ah, whatever. Work is all done, so let's go home." He stood up to stretch, then said to him, "You live by yourself in the capital, yes? It would be a hassle to go back and have your maids rekindle the cooking fire at this time of day, so why not go out to eat with me?" Lu Lingzi had no objections, of course. The other brought him to that wonton stall he most frequented. Over the many years since he had entered the capital, the stall had remained the same as it always was, as did the taste and serving portion, sizes had not ever gone down. Tang Fan was a sentimental man in his bones, so he was fond of coming here not only because of the delicious wontons but because of how nostalgic it was. In these few years, the couple that owned the stall had long become familiar with him. Seeing him bring a young man with him, the stall owner joked, "Sir Tang, why did you switch bows today? What are you talking about? All I've ever brought with me are co-workers and friends." Tang Fan scolded with a laugh. Right now, he was just like any average person on the street, not putting on his airs of a court official. The proprietor wasn't scared of him, teasing back, all right, this lowly one was wrong. It's a friend this time, not a beau." Having no way to handle him, Tang Fan waved him off. "Hurry up with your wontons, eh? I'll have the usual, 2 bowls with a lot of diced scallions. Wait, what do you want, Yuking?" "I don't like cilantro but anything else is fine." "Don't put cilantro in that one bowl, and the other is the usual," Tang Fan said to the owner. "Got it," the other replied, smoothly flipping his cleaning rag onto his shoulder and striding over to the stall to get the food. "Brother Tang, do you and Commanding Officer Sui often come here to eat wontons?" Lu Lingzi wondered. Tang Fan shook his head. "Not him alone. I've also brought Wang Ji, Mr. Huayan, and others here. Whenever Tang Fan wanted them to be, his answers would always be flawless. Lu Lingzi was a bit disappointed. He held it back for a long time, then finally couldn't hold back anymore. Brother Tang, I want to ask you something. Tang Fan showed no ripples of surprise. Go ahead. Do you know that Commanding Officer Sui treats you like? He didn't finish, but Tang Fan appeared to know what he was asking, humming. I do. Lu Lingzi was startled, as if he was not expecting that he would admit to it so breezily. Then, you also? Yes. My heart goes with his. The other was completely without words. Turning to look at him, Tang Fan started laughing. What's with that face? Lu Lingzi was tongue-tied. But that's... He wanted to say something, and also felt that saying anything at all would be inappropriate. In the end, he asked what he had always wanted to ask. What if he were me? If I could give everything up for you, would you be willing to be with me? Tang Fan shook his head. I only see you as a little brother and a friend. I'm not any worse than him. Lu Lingzi said, suddenly refusing to accept this. Tang Fan smiled lightly. Who's worse and who's not is irrelevant. If it's not him, then it's not right. Lu Lingzi had nothing to say. He had finally drummed up the courage to clarify things, only for Tang Fan to hold him back with a single sentence. His faint hope was put out at last, dismay and disappointment all over his face. Right then, the proprietor came over with the 2 bowls of piping hot wontons in chicken broth. The usual, Sir Tang. Your bowl here is full of scallions. Our scallion yubbing are not yet sold out, and I set aside a portion for you. Do you want some? He asked. Of course, I do. You didn't put it on the tab when you saw me coming over here. What were you thinking? Tang Fan answered cheerfully. The wontons were indeed delicious, having thin skin stuffed full with fresh and tender meat. When biting into them, juices would flow out that had a mild chicken stock flavor, with some moderate saltiness. However, Lu Lingzi tasted nothing, merely scooping up spoonfuls, then dumping them out. He looked at Tang Fan again. The other was not affected in the least, most of his wontons quickly vanishing. Lu Lingzi felt even worse at that. After he was done eating, Tang Fan took out a handkerchief and wiped his mouth off, fully content. Upon turning his head, he noticed that Lu Lingzi hadn't touched most of his food, and sighed inwardly. Yuking. The other raised his head, giving a confused expression. Your performance in the cabinet these days has been mediocre. You can't even compare to Lu Meng and the rest of them. Lu Lingzi thought to defend himself. After thinking about it, he couldn't find anything to say in self-defense. He had known as well that he had been distracted these past few days, and really hadn't gotten much proper business done. Even if things had been done, his mind hadn't been on it, it was in a muddled state that could not be described. He hadn't even read the book of revised laws that Tang Fan had asked him to. That in mind, he said dejectedly, I really did fail in my duties. Brother Tang, I have a request. Tang Fan motioned for him to continue. Lu Lingzi hesitated for a bit, then said, these past 2 days were not only because of this. I was thinking about it, and I feel that I'm really not suitable to be in the cabinet at all. Do you think that I don't know what's good for me, brother? Why do you say that? Tang Fan asked back, not expressing an opinion. The cabinet was a place that many dreamed of, unable to get in even if they wanted to. Now that Lu Lingzi had the chance to work in it and had gotten in after a lot of hard work, he was starting to think of leaving after only a few days. Were anyone else to hear of this, they would gnash their teeth in anger. Lu Lingzi smiled painfully. I'm not sure. If I say it, don't scold me too much. Go on. Lu Lingzi sighed. When I wasn't yet an official, I always felt that being one was restrictive, and I only wanted to be happy, not have enmities and wander the world. Then, when I followed by your side, I realized that my ideas were way too naive, which is why I took the test into being a palace honored. Now that I'm in the cabinet though, for some reason, I'm a little perplexed. I thought and thought about it, and maybe it's me that's too lacking, or maybe I'm not capable enough to do the job. Hence why I boldly want to request one thing from you. I want to transfer out of here. Even if I'm a 7th rank county magistrate, that'll be fine. Tang Fan creased his brow. Is that because of me? Lu Lingzi laughed. Actually, it was because you were around that I kept hesitating up until this point. Tang Fan looked at him for a moment. If you've really made up your mind, that's fine. Many people think transferring out of the capital to be a dangerous road, and believe that in all of their lives, there is nothing better for rising to the top than staying in the capital, calling it a smooth ride. I don't agree at all, though. If you can experience the hard toil of being a guardian official, it can be of great benefit to the scope of your future career path. Since you're saying that, it meant you agree, right? I do, but won't you regret it? I hope you aren't saying this out of momentary anger. I won't regret it, and I'm not having a fit of anger. Tang Fan smiled, patting his shoulder. Since you won't have regrets, I'll help you. Feeling the warmth on his shoulder, Lu Lingzi's heart first jumped, then felt slightly bitter. He wasn't his. He was destined to not be his, in the end. Rather than bitterly beg to stay, it would be better to simply give up. The disappearance of one minor Hanlin Academy attendee did not stir up any waves. Aside from those who knew Lu Lingzi, no one even asked. Even the other cabinet members had not become familiar with him due to him only having been posted for a few days. At most, they had seen an unfamiliar face at Tang Fan's side. It would have been weird for them to ask about it. With Tang Fan's help, Lu Lingzi left the capital and headed for a post in a small county on the border. Stemming from its poverty and lag in progress, the area had always been viewed as a perilous path by many. Yet, someone like Lu Lingzi, who originally had a brilliant path forward, had asked to go here of his own volition, was a definite oddity. It soon came close to the 7th month. At a time when no one could say so clearly, yet had long known it was going to happen, the emperor finally passed on. Many knew well that to do so was disrespectful, yet they couldn't help but silently let out sighs of relief. One era finished, and a new one begun. From the next year onwards, the realm's era name would no longer be Chenghua. It would be Hongji. End chapter.